Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and welcome to issue number 5 of The Division Weekly. I've got another jam-packed issue for you guys this week, but before we even get into all of that, we have to go ahead and, of course, kick it off with our fan art focus. Now, before we even talk about the image that you guys are seeing, there's a bit of a story behind the artist behind this image, Titus Lunter, of which I will have his DeviantArt linked down in the description below. Please do me a favor and go check out all of his work. The stuff is absolutely killer. But going back a few years ago, Titus actually applied for a concept artist role at Ubisoft to work on a then unannounced game. They asked him to do a bit of a concept art piece around a certain theme. Sadly, he wasn't selected for the job role, and I don't think it was because of his skills. The man is obviously very talented, as you can see as from this image, as well as all of the other images that he has over on his DeviantArt page. But a lot of people applied, he didn't end up getting the role. Fast forward several years later, and it turns out that the game he would have been working on was The Division. So he decided to sit down and do a bit of concept art of his own, now knowing what The Division is actually going to look like. And I have to say, I think he killed it. And I think there's someone at Ubisoft saying, damn, why didn't we hire that guy? Look at this freaking image, man. Seriously though, this is a wonderful piece of concept art. I love what he's done with the lighting sources in this image. There's a lot of atmosphere provided by these lighting sources. You can start on the right side. We've got a street lamp post here, which to me, like, just give me a dark alleyway and a lamppost, or a dude with a lantern, and I'm like set. Like, that's enough atmosphere for 50 million years for me, and he's got that. Then moving across the screen, we've got a bit of a light coming from inside of the hotel. All the way in the background, what seems to be maybe a light source from a fire, perhaps the cleaners added again, burning more things down. Then we've got a traffic light on the back of this parked truck here, or this sort of barricade. And then moving even further left, we have what seems to be some sort of a small fire. Maybe even a campfire or barrel fire behind a barricaded area. Perhaps there's some rioters or even some civilians huddled around this fire trying to keep warm in the frigid New York City night. On top of that, there's also some signage going around. So even right above that image, we can see a small sign that has a bit of graffiti on it. There's a sign above that that's a little bit more illegible. Can't really even read what that says. And then pushing backwards, we actually have an arcade sign, so an old arcade in this area perhaps with the R missing. And then on the right side of the street here, we have the hotel itself. A lot of depth to a lot of the elements in this image. It feels very 3D, you know, some really great perspective. And again, like I said, a lot of amazing atmosphere. So props to Titus on this one. Please, guys, go check out all of his other work. As I said, I'll have his DeviantArt linked down in the description below. So let's go ahead and move forward with the discussion data for this week. And I wanted to do a small bit of related discussion, I guess you could say. I wanted to highlight some related reading that very much falls in line with the theme of The Division. And that is a magazine called OffGrid. Now, it's actually a magazine that is sort of a spin-off of Recoil. Recoil is a firearms enthusiast magazine that focuses on the civilian, the military side, all aspects of firearms. If you're into that sort of thing, it's an amazing magazine. It really genuinely is. But then they have OffGrid, which is sort of a survivalist preparation style magazine. You can call it a preppers magazine, call it whatever you want. It's awesome. Each and every issue, they focus on a different sort of catastrophe. It goes from anything as crazy as the recent issue, issue number 12, which focuses on a bio-terrorist attack, to surviving a plane crash, dealing with an economic collapse. What if hackers managed to turn the grid off? Like, really cool real-world situations that could, in theory, most definitely happen. Some of them, you know, are going to seem more grounded in reality to some people than others. But honestly, this kind of stuff to me is just awesome. It's a really good read. It is a fair bit of entertainment on top of that, and you're learning something along the way. You're learning some really great information. Of course, it's up to you to then put that information to use in whatever way you see fit. I like the idea of just being informed as I possibly can. And if I get to read it in a really well-written magazine that seriously teaches me some things, then why the hell not? Because you never know. You never know. One day, you may end up in a plane crash. Now, wouldn't it suck to survive said plane crash and then die because you simply didn't know how to survive in the environment you were in? That's the kind of stuff that OffGrid looks at. And I'm totally into that kind of stuff. Not only that, the most recent issue, issue number 12, Outbreak, which is out right now in newsstands, is very much in the line with what's going on in the world of The Division. So I thought it was definitely a great piece of related reading. You guys can go ahead and check it out. I'll have a link to the full OffGrid website down in the description below if you want to learn more about the magazine, maybe even consider subscribing or read some older issues they have on the website. And of course, if you're interested in trying to grab a recent issue, you can head out to your local bookstore, your local newsstand. I was able to pick up a copy of issue number 12, Outbreak, for $9.99 at my local Barnes & Noble. So let's move forward and talk about the open beta. That's right, it is in fact happening. It exists. Ubisoft was very hum about it all. They tried to play it off like, we'll see you guys in March. Thanks a lot for helping out with the closed beta. And then they're just like, boom, open beta in a week. So the open beta is going to be starting on the 19th of February and running to the 21st. So that is this weekend. If you're on Xbox One, you're going to get 1 day of early access on the 18th. It's also going to include one new mission. At least that's all we know for sure. One brand new mission. I imagine everything else in the beta will probably stay the same. Maybe we'll have the opportunity to see some more enemy spawn rates. I really don't know what their direction is with it, but we're going to have one new mission, and I guess that's cool enough. I really didn't expect to be able to play the game again, considering how close launch is. In fact, I imagine that they will probably announce the game has gone gold shortly after the beta ends, if not the day the beta ends. At this point in time, I would say that anything we're going to be playing in the beta is probably already outdated in terms of the build that they're going to be pushing or working on as they move closer to the launch in March. That's usually the case with betas, is a lot of the stuff that you play is up to a month behind where current development is. So that could be the instance with this open beta. Nonetheless, it's an opportunity for everyone, regardless if they pre-ordered the game or not, to finally play The Division. A very, very smart marketing move by Ubisoft. No doubt about that, regardless of how much actual benefit they're going to see from people testing the game last minute. This is a great way for everyone to play the game, to see what it's all about, and have it be fresh in their memory with just a couple weeks before the game's actual launch. Extremely smart move. Now, if you're curious as to how you get your hands on the open beta, you're not going to need a code or anything like that. This is going to be something that's just readily available as soon as it goes live. So if you're on PC, go to Uplay. When the day comes, I'm not sure exactly what time we're looking at. Last beta, it was like 4 in the morning EST, but you'll go to your games, you'll see it as one of the games that is in your library. You'll just click install and you'll be ready to go. If you're on PlayStation or on Xbox and you want to head over to the game store on those respective platforms and just look in the demo section. That's how Xbox and PlayStation have done it. That's how they did it with the Rainbow Six Siege open beta. They just download as demos and you are good to go. As I said, Xbox One gets a 1-day head start. The question I have for you guys is, are you actually looking forward to playing more of The Division, or are you just kind of set? A buddy of mine was like, you know what? I've been good since closed alpha on Xbox One. I don't need to play the game anymore. They've sold me on it. I really liked what I played, and I didn't even play that much, and that's a good sign. I'm ready to pick the game up come March. So how do you guys feel? Are you looking forward to playing more just because you want to play more, or do you still need some more convincing? Are you hoping you'll see a little bit more of the game exposed? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section below. So let's move forward and talk about a brand new faction. In fact, I think the last faction that we're going to see revealed before the game goes live in just a couple weeks. Ubisoft released a really cool trailer. It's got some music from the Glitch Mob, which is just awesome. I feel like they're extremely underrated artists. Maybe they're more popular than I feel, but I feel like they're a bit underrated. Anyways, they killed it with the trailer, and the trailer focused on all of the factions that are going to exist inside of the Division, including the Division themselves. So we saw the Rikers, we see the Riders, and the Cleaners. They talk a little bit about themselves, they say why they're there. It's just a really well put together trailer. And then we also got to see the reveal of a brand new faction known as the Last Man Battalion. Now these guys are ex-private military corporation, they're ex-PMCs, and they seem to mean business. In fact, one of their main goals is to restore, or I should say activate, military order inside of New York City. It seems like they're going to be a much more high-level threat. They look really well outfitted. I mean, obviously the skills and their tactics are going to be there. They're ex-freaking PMCs. That's about as hardcore as it gets. Really awesome faction edition. I like the variety in the factions, right? You got the Rioters, sort of the bottom of the barrel, just causing chaos because they can. You've got the Cleaners, you know, sort of blue-collar, you know, their own agenda, feeling like they are doing what's best. Like, we know this is what's best. You have to burn it all. You got the Rikers, who are just a bunch of escaped convicts. You know, they have a lot of reason to not want things to change. I mean, this is freedom to them, and they know if the world goes back to the way it was before the outbreak, there'll be law, and that means they'll be back in prison. And then you've got a private military, a bunch of ex-PMCs who just, you know, I mean, have the sense that, like, we know what it takes to provide order. We know what it takes to restore chaos, and that is military control, and that's what they're all about. And then at the end of the day, you have, of course, the faction you'll be participating with, the Division, and their motto is sort of, there's always a better way, and we know how to lead New York City. We know how to revive it and do it in the best possible way, a way that doesn't harm or cause more unnecessary death to those around us. At least that's the premise. So really cool, like what they did with that trailer. Nice to get a little bit of a confirmation on all of the factions that we'll be seeing, at least at the launch of the game in just a couple weeks. So I wanted to spend a big chunk of time talking about probably one of the largest rumors that exists right now for the Division, an unconfirmed rumor at that. And that, of course, is the idea that the Division will include 8-man raids as some form of endgame content. Now, this is a really big deal. It falls in line, number one, with what Destiny has done with raids, and obviously endgame content for a lot of people is going to be an important part of the Division because people are looking to the Division like a very substantial long-term experience, much like Destiny. So if there is some sort of really large-scale endgame content, it gives people something to look forward to, a place where they can go to get really high-level loot, and also a place that's going to put their skills to the test. Everything they've learned up until that point about playing their character, about playing with their friends, is now going to be expanded on as they have to cooperate with an even larger group of people in what would hopefully be a really complex and diverse combat environment. This is the big thing, right? The Division tags itself as an RPG first and foremost. To me, this gives them a lot of room to open up what they could do with a raid because they're not so focused on just being a shooter. That means the idea that there's diversity in the raid itself, you know, maybe stealth moments, puzzle solving. Like, I don't know how they can make it all work and still have it make sense in the world that they've created in the Division, but I'm looking forward to it. I hope it exists. I hope it's a real thing. I mean, the rumors go as far as to say that it's going to take place on Rikers Island in the prison itself, the same prison the Rikers escaped from, obviously. And also that it's going to happen 2 weeks post-launch, which would make sense. You know, this is going to give people a time to grind through the game. And I say grind because I think anyone who's ready for a max level raid experience has probably grinded pretty hard. I would say that they haven't really let the juices soak in. They've just eaten the entire sandwich in one giant gulp is what I should say. But, you know, give people time to get comfortable with the game and then launch it. It just doesn't make sense to launch something like this at launch. It gives them possibly a little bit more time to tweak and refine the experience and then put it live. Now, who knows if it is actually going to be end game? It could be, you know, it could be something that happens mid-game, like halfway through the level. There could just be mission requirements. We know so little about it, and none of the rumors that we have heard have been confirmed by Ubisoft. And you know what? I love that. I love that they haven't. I genuinely hope it exists, but if it does, I'm really happy that Ubisoft hasn't said anything for sure, because too many games, I say this so many times, I say this again and again, it's such a modern thing in game development to just tell us everything about the game. Every little component, to leave nothing up to the players to be discovered day 1 or, you know, day 30. So if there is something that's going to be a last minute surprise, even outside of the raid, like, kudos to Ubisoft for holding back some things and giving us something to be surprised about. I really hope that is the case. Now, the last thing I want to talk about this week is of course, the viewer submitted topic, which is Destiny versus The Division. This was submitted by Fuzzle, but obviously it's something that's on everyone's mind because The Division and Destiny fall in line with two games that are very much genre blending. They are trying to take a slew of different genres and morph them into something different. Destiny sat down and said, how can we do a first-person shooter that has RPG and MMO-style elements, you know, that's persistent, that has open-world elements? Like, how do we put that all together? And honestly, Destiny did something completely new, and I don't think people give it enough credit for that. It's still a game that I feel is very special, despite all the flack it's gotten over the years since it launched. It's a really exciting experience if you know when to put it down, if you know when to step away. And I imagine the same thing is going to happen with The Division. The Division, of course, you know, falling in line with that, but then saying to themselves, let's reorder the way we think about this type of experience. And this is really what I want to talk about, because we don't know everything about The Division. We know just about everything about Destiny. It's been out for how long now? And they're already talking Destiny 2 in 2017. But what I want to do is compare things that we already know about both sides of the coin. And again, it's the really personal comparisons. This isn't like, you know, a way of actually saying Destiny versus The Division. It's more of Destiny and The Division. Like, let's talk about the two games, where they differ, at least where I feel they substantially differ. First and foremost for me is the way the developers look at each of their games. So you have Destiny, right? Bungie has always said Destiny is a first-person shooter first and foremost. Like, that's their game, it's a first-person shooter. And of course, then they've infused MMO elements, RPG elements. In fact, to certain degrees that I don't feel they even recognize. You know, they're so akin, at least they were so akin. I think they've become more comfortable with the idea that Destiny is an RPG. You know, it does have MMO elements, and I think the game has become better that since they've recognized that. But there's no doubt that they've said from day one, first-person shooter first and foremost. Whereas you have Ubisoft, the guys at Massive, Red Storm, everybody working on The Division, who have been very, very quick to say, listen, no, The Division is an RPG first and foremost. It's an RPG, and then it's a third-person cover-based shooter. Whereas Destiny is a first-person shooter, and then it's an RPG with a semi-persistent open world, and so on and so forth. So one of the biggest things that separates the two games is the way the developers look at each of their games. I feel that's definitely a big thing in how The Division is going to grow and expand as compared to how Destiny has grown and expanded. Second, and probably one of the most noticeable things, is the way the world design is working. The Division is one big, seamless open world. We know that the map itself is larger than Fallout 4 and smaller than GTA 5's at this point, thanks to Marco Styles. But it's one big open world. It's essentially seamless. There are no real loading screens. Whereas Destiny decided to do sort of instant planet locations. Now, I'm not saying that those locations themselves are small. They're not. You know, Mars is pretty substantial, Earth, so on and so forth. But because of the fact that they're instants, and because of the way Destiny then designed a lot of its content around that, they provide, in my opinion, two very different experiences. Like, even in the demo of The Division, when we have a small area of the map, I'm super compelled to explore, to go up ladders, to go down alleyways, just to see what's around the corner. You know, I feel like I'm constantly rewarded for exploring the environment, not just with loot, but also just with the design of a certain location. You know, shortcuts even that lead you across different streets that you didn't know existed. Destiny hasn't ever really done that. Like, yeah, there are reasons to explore certain areas of certain maps, but really the focus of Destiny is to go to Earth to do a certain goal, to do a strike, to do a mission, to collect some material, so on and so forth. It doesn't ever feel like a reason to just bumble about Earth until you've poured an insane amount of time in the game and you're just looking for reasons to check every single nook and cranny. Everything feels ultra directed in Destiny. It doesn't ever feel like a reason to just take a casual trek from one side of the map to the other. And there's no real reward for doing so either. And that, of course, leads to the fact there's no reason for doing it either. So, you know, I would say that's one really big area where the Division and Destiny differ. Now, the last thing on the list for me, and probably the biggest one, is the fact that Destiny is a first-person shooter, and the Division is a third-person cover-based shooter. Now, third-person shooters in general are notoriously difficult to portray really good shooting mechanics through. Weapon handling, recoil, you know, just the feel of weapons, making sure that the Scar L feels different from, you know, the M4 and the 5.56 and so on and so forth. Like, that's a hard thing to do in a third-person shooter. It always has been. Few games have been able to really make a solid, great-feeling third-person shooter. And few games have been able to do that inside of what is then a cover-based shooter. Whereas you have Destiny, which is first-person, so that's already a positive, not to mention it's Bungie first-person. Bungie is like the king of making really great first-person shooter design. And I still, you know, hold my opinion that to this day, Destiny is one of the best feeling and best and most satisfying first-person shooter experiences you can play. It's an amazing game to play. It's super satisfying to pull the trigger on each and every single weapon variety and weapon type. It just feels great to engage enemies. It's a really satisfying first-person shooter. And that's something the Division is always going to have trouble with as a third-person shooter. But that being said, it is a cover-based shooter. And if you like the idea of moving from cover to cover, dealing with enemies and flanking them, that to me is an enjoyable experience in itself, one that Destiny can't really provide. And that's something that I've always enjoyed. It's why I love Gears of War, and I've loved the Ghost Recon games. And it's why I really have enjoyed the Division's combat, despite the fact that I do feel it could take some improvement in terms of the shooting mechanic and the feel of the shooting. And I hope that's something that they do manage to refine just a little bit more before the game does finally go live. So, obviously a big area where the games differ, not just in their design, but also in the audience they're going to attract. There's quite a few people out there, including Fuzzle, you know, the dude who submitted the Destiny versus Division topic here. You know, Fuzzle, you've said numerous times to me in the comments that, you know, you enjoy a first-person shooter more than a cover-based third-person shooter. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's you know, I like strawberry ice cream, you like chocolate ice cream, so on and so forth. The big thing is for the developer to make sure that they can make the best possible experience of that type, of that kind, to draw in the dude from another crowd, to draw in the first-person shooter guy, and vice versa. That's really up to the developer at that point to just, like I said, make the best possible experience of that type that they can, to make sure that the guy who normally plays first-person shooters has a reason to come play this third-person cover-based shooter, and vice versa. And at the end of the day, what does this mean? Well, it means that there are now 2 games essentially in the same genre, this hybrid genre, and that's going to create competition. And that, of course, is a very good thing. Something I'm very much looking forward to. Because they do have to consider, Bungie has to consider, man, this could possibly pull players away from Destiny. What are we going to do on our next piece of content? How are we going to keep players on board? Or how are we going to at least make sure that they're playing both games and not just the other guy's game? And vice versa. The Division's constantly going to have to be saying to themselves post-launch, people could possibly be looking to go back to Destiny. They just released a new piece of DLC. What are we going to do to keep players in? It's going to make sure that they're always on their toes. They're just ready for the next fight. And that only means good things for us as the consumer. So that's it, guys. That's going to wrap up this week's issue. I hope you guys enjoyed this issue as always. If you have any questions or pieces of discussion you would like to throw in regarding anything we talked about this week, feel free to throw it down in the comments section below. That is one error I am going to infinitely make in my closer. On top of that, get yourself excited for one more go at The Division before it goes live this March, this weekend with the beta. Hopefully you have some time off. You can finally get your hands on it. If you didn't participate in the closed beta or the alpha on Xbox One, this is your chance to finally play the game for yourself and help wrap up your decision as to whether or not you'll be picking up The Division in just a couple weeks. I'll see you in the next one.